The Space Between is a 2019 game created by Austrian artist Christoph Frey, a man known not only for his history with developing unusual, existential indie games, but also for other audio and visual artistic works, notably a 42-hour-long movie about the concepts of closeness and distance. And this game explores those concepts too, of distance, of presence, of absence, of the desire to be intimate, and of that which divides us. It's a short piece, only lasting approximately 1 hour of gameplay, and yet this feels like more than enough time for a densely packed experience that often relies on slow, meditative pacing to tell its narrative. Far more is told in a few precious moments of brief imagery than can be illustrated in 1,000 pages of text, which, of course, makes this essay a joy to write. For those of you who don't know me, I'm SulMatul, and I sometimes talk about artsy, strange, and existentially probing games, and this one is right up my alley. It's a short little piece, as I've said, and it's available on Steam and itch.io for $6, so I'd highly recommend experiencing it for yourself before launching into this video, especially as I'm sprinkling this narrative with my own interpretation, and due to the questioning, introspective nature of this piece, I think you'll get more out of engaging in that introspection yourself, rather than just listening to mine. For those of you still with me, be warned, here be spoilers. So, come along, ladies, gentlemen, and those whomst lieth betwixt, and let's experience something that might make us uncomfortable, but all the better for it. Let's experience the space between. Our game opens with a low-resolution crawl of text, informing us of the murder of an architect and, curiously, that this architect was found in a building of his own design, dead within the walls he himself built. Ongoing investigations point towards possible suspects in his close environment. Remember these words, they're going to be important. As you, the player, begin the game, you'll notice that dialogue is slow, the gameplay minimal, very much in the genre of what one could call a walking sim, but to describe this game in such terms would sell it short. It's closer to an interactive theatrical performance than a walking sim. We aren't just maneuvering a pretty environment, we are in fact playing a role. But whose role are we playing? Well, that too remains vague. The dialogue is heavy, methodical, giving time to think after every single line. Throughout almost all acts of the game, there appear to be two actors on the stage, a character whose body we inhabit, and the other character they are addressing. But who is saying which lines? There's no text box, there's no coloration, there's no prompting, there is no indication, and, for the most part, it does not matter. We only know who we are by perceiving ourselves in the other, but, unlike Hegel's philosophy, in which this leads to competition and the forming of a master-slave dialectic, or forging an identity via one's interaction with others, our identity remains vague, fluid, shifting. Our perspective alters, we inhabit the body and play the role of more than one character, and yet we feel much the same in each instance, only able to understand ourselves via our connections to others, and by our isolation and fear of them. The player, you, awaken to the sight of enormous chairs around you, with a colourful rug on the floor and a bedsheet for the sky. You're inside a child's blanket fort, or perhaps just under your parents' table. There's an early 2000s PlayStation 1 grit to the graphics, where everything seems fuzzy, hazy, just a touch out of focus. It adds to the dreamlike quality, the sense of derealization and disconnection that forms the main narrative theme of the game. We approach the edge of the blanket fort and engage in dialogue with an unseen other, one who we never see. A character named Martin, and a character named Daniel talk, but which of us is which? It's hard to tell. Daniel asks Martin if he's going to come out, but Martin refuses. Not yet. He isn't ready yet. Martin asks Daniel to stay, just a little longer. He longs for the presence of others, as much as he is afraid of them, as much as he can't bear seeing them in full. I will paraphrase the dialogue. The original text is in German and has some minor translation errors, but I hope my localization will still get across the poignancy of the words said between them.
I'm glad you're here, in this moment. I don't see you, but I know you're there, on the other side.
I'm glad we're friends.
One asks the other to place their hand on the bedsheet. They place their hands together, touching, but still separated by the fabric.
Do you feel my hand? Or the curtain?
Both, I guess?
We feel our connections to others, but they always have their limits, their boundaries, that which divides the self and the other. Boundaries that give us our safety, but can also be used to lock ourselves away. Martin never sees Daniel, and we never see Daniel either. Instead of observing him in full for all that he is, and instead of allowing him to observe us, we only extend the touch of our hand. Even then, it is interrupted by the fabric of the sheets. We don't get to know one another in any whole or complete way. We only connect in the barest, most minimal sense. Touching, yes, but still divided. In an instant, our perspective shifts. We stand outside an apartment complex at night. The building itself seems tall, imposing, and somehow impersonal. Although we are implied to live here, it does not feel like a home. It lacks the comfort or connection. We meet another character standing outside, smoking a cigarette, though the low polygon graphics make it difficult to tell many features about them. Short-haired and androgyne, it is hard to know who they are. One character introduces themselves as Martin, the other is Clara, but once more, which is which? For the sake of simplicity, I assume that we, the players, are taking on the role of Martin, and that our companion is Clara, but this is hardly clear-cut. Perhaps we are Clara and our companion is Martin, the man with such a fear of connection. The two exchange a few words. They both live in the same apartment building. One of them, perhaps Martin, admits that he has seen Clara in the courtyard before, watching her standing outside through the safety of his window, whilst he remains safely inside. The other, likely Clara, admits to doing the opposite, of standing outside in the courtyard and voyeuristically watching people through the windows of their homes, Martin included. Who is seeing whom? Who is the active observer and who is the passive subject of their voyeurism? Can it be both? Can you truly see someone, truly know them when there are barriers, distortions in the way, like a lens or the glass of an imperfect window? We observe, but the light is bent out of shape, and what we see isn't the same as what is actually there. We only see the image of others, but images and reality can be extremely different things. Which of these characters has the inherent power? The one on the outside looking in as a predatory voyeur might? Or the one on the inside looking out, gazing down from within a place of security? The scene suddenly cuts. We, as the audience, the players, observe the window, the lens, but we see nothing on the other side. The actors sit together and exchange more words. Martin is an architect, a builder of walls and creator of boundaries, the person that creates the division of what is outside and what is inside, the person that decides who gets to be the voyeur in the courtyard and who gets to have the safety of the apartment's walls. And even within such spaces, within the inside of buildings, there are still boundaries. Boundaries of matter, of physical walls and barriers, yes, but also incorporeal barriers. The barriers between social roles, between the hierarchy of boss and worker, between producer and consumer, between the audience and the actors upon a stage.
Sometimes walls don't have to be made of matter.
I know. And sometimes walls can be very, very thin. What are you building?
A theater.
How fitting, then, that Martin has designed a building with such significant boundaries between audience and performer. There's no one that loves boundaries more than him. We are taken to a new room with Clara, or is that Martin, and observe the architectural plans, a miniature of the building and the other artistic representations of it. We converse with Clara about how the boundaries between who we are and the work we do are also thin, more blurry than we often think. When we identify ourselves, it is often by our work. I'm a doctor, I'm an architect, I'm a poet, to the point where our work becomes us. This begs the question, is it truly possible to separate art from artist, creator from creation, especially when you see so much of yourself reflected in what you create? In Martin's case, the answer appears to be a solid no. He is his work. He is the buildings he crafts, and if that's the case, he is the walls he builds. His identity is wholly based on barriers. Martin and Clara talk further. Martin reveals that he has, in fact, built a private room for himself within the theatre, a part of the building that will be forever his and his alone, which he invites Clara to join him in seeing. It's an unusual step for one so caught up in their own boundaries, the walls that he's built around himself. But what else can get us to soften our barriers but the affection of someone that we are romantically interested in? We abruptly appear under the blue sky of construction work, our companion uncomfortably close to us. We enter the half-constructed, half-formed theatre, with walls slowly being erected, but not quite fully up yet. We enter the building.
The audience gets to know the actors, while the actors don't know the audience, right?
The couple talk more as we descend the steps of the theatre. The building's model is strange. Half-open sky above, scaffolding all around. The stage is only partially built. It's still steel and concrete and wood, barely a skeleton of what it will become, incomplete but full of potential. Without its walls completed, it is vulnerable, open, making it easier to see its truth, and, as one of the tune notes, sometimes there's more truth in seeing something in development, seeing what it currently is as it prepares for what it will be. But even in its partially built state, the division between stage and audience has already been created. We walk past the scaffolding, down the steps of the seating area, and cross the invisible, unspoken boundary between audience and performer, between the watched and the watcher, active voyeur and passive subject. Same thoughts are raised again as they were with the windows of the apartment. Who is seeing who? As we approach the stage, one of our actors asks the question,
Would we still be the audience here? Or are we already performing?
the difference between the audience and performer, that which separates them, is presented as a boundary far thinner than we normally presume. Are we not all engaging in social performances? Are the masks we wear around others, the personas we adopt, not just another form of acting? The question is uncomfortable, not least because of the implication of social role, of acting that role, is still associated with a heavy boundary. The division between audience and performer. With such divisions, is it possible for one to truly know and connect with another?
What's the difference between the audience and the actors? What separates them?
The curtain, I guess?
And after the play has already started?
Sometimes walls don't have to be made out of matter. And sometimes closeness comes through separation.
The game does not often raise this as a point, as it is more preoccupied with the negative connotations of erecting barriers, but in this instance, there is still the opposite problem to consider. Sometimes closeness is something that can only be achieved through understanding barriers. Sometimes, in order to become close, one must have boundaries, particularly in interpersonal and intimate relationships. To become too close and lose that separation, becoming devoted to someone totally and completely without any boundaries, is a way to forget yourself and lose your own identity. It's a way not to engage with who you are and destroy yourself over time. It's a way to become easily abused. Divisions are necessary to still be able to see someone else as separate from you. To misquote Hegel again, having someone else still as an other, a separate thinking being with their own full agency and perceptions of you, is the only way to actually perceive yourself and your identity. Perhaps this is what Martin is thinking of, or perhaps he is merely coming up with more excuses to hide within his own walls and be timid in his trust.
I think trust is a decision, an act.
Is it acting?
This dialogue line presents something of a paradox. To engage in trust is to engage in honesty, in authenticity, but to engage in acting is to play a role, play pretend, and be inauthentic. Which choice is it that Martin and Clara will make? Genuine trust or inauthentic performativity? Can it be both? In an act of trust, we delve deep beneath the stage with our companion and go to Martin's private room at the back of the theatre.
The audience only gets to know the actor's role, while the actors can observe the honesty of voyeurs, right?
We walk behind the scenes, under the stage. Here we see another boundary. The understage is not for the audience to see and is a boundary that they are supposed to respect. Though this may be hollow, our companion notes it is not empty. Props for plays and other unseen equipment will be stored here, hidden until the right moment for the audience to see, until narratively appropriate for the play. Just as we hide parts of ourselves from those we are intimate with until the right moment, until the narrative of our intimacy demands it. Even at our most vulnerable, we are still actors. Even with those who know us best, we can never show them our entire, complete truth. We hide our understage and the full, unfettered things that lie beneath. In our performance on the stage above, we only show what we want to show. But Martin and Clara still engage in the act of vulnerability with one another and enter the architect's private room, this private expression of the self.
I'm glad you're here, in this moment. I'm glad we know each other.
These words mirror the opening scene between Martin and Daniel, when Martin hid under the bedsheets as a child. We see this as a recurrent issue for him. Cycles of knowing, of being known, of attempts at vulnerability, and yet that vulnerability is somehow incomplete as his attempts fail. The phone rings. We cut to black.
Do you know what they called the understage in the past? They called it hell.
There are some philosophers that view such deep connections to be vulnerable enough to show all of oneself, all one's dark understage, as something disquieting, something uncomfortable. Sartre described being seen, truly seen, as a nauseating experience, as something shameful and somehow disgusting. Being seen is for someone else to observe all the parts we don't like about ourselves, all the things we'd rather hide, that make us feel self-loathing and self-disgust. He describes it as a squirming, anxious, horrible experience. To connect with other people and have them see all the parts of ourselves we hate so fully, so honestly and raw, is torture. As he famously said, hell is other people. I'm reminded of his play, No Exit, in which his characters are trapped in hell, much like Clara and Martin's hell of the understage. Salter's characters are only able to understand themselves by being known, being seen by others, but this only allows them to form a self-image that is somehow ignoble, detestable, nothing akin to how they'd like to see themselves. The fear of this detestable self-image is what drives all of Martin's actions, all his choices, many of which are extremely poor. The scene cuts back from black. We see a door before us, but we can't reach it. A door is a barrier, but unlike a wall, it is a boundary that we are able to pass through. But we, as players, are unable to pass through this one yet. It's not our time. It's someone else's. It's daylight. The sun relentlessly beats down on us. The music slowly shifts to a melancholy, somber tone. We see a grand and imposing, but drab building before us. Brutalist, with emphasis on the brutal. As beautiful as the architecture may be to someone like Martin, it still carries with it a sense of dread and trepidation. We step tentatively forward. The inside has a wide, open space, but only one strip of bright light. The rest is in shadow, hidden by tall, red curtains, much like the boundaries of our childhood blanket fort, boundaries that we instinctively know that we should not cross. Eventually, we reach the head of the building, the area with the one open curtain, the one opened barrier. Here lies a grave. Daniel's grave. Martin's friend is interred in this casket, and we are still unable to see his face. And now, we never will. We go to interact with it, and once more, our words again mirror our childhood.
Hey, Daniel. I don't see you, but I know you're there, on the other side. I love you. I wish I could be close.
There's a real tone of absolute, helpless regret here. There was all that potential for closeness, for intimacy, for bonding, now lost forever. Daniel is gone through a barrier that we cannot follow. Martin is reminded of that brief moment in his childhood, and the perspective shifts back to that moment in the blanket fort. We place our hand on the bedsheet. What do we feel? Daniel, or the fabric? The scene is tragic. Despite all his desire for intimacy with Daniel, Martin never allowed himself to have it. He kept the barriers there and never, ever let them down. How close did we truly get? How much distance is there still in the barrier between us and those we love? Can we ever say that we truly love someone, all parts of them, when there's so much in the understage, in their hell, that we never see? The things that they never show us? And how do we know that we are loved when we keep so much of ourselves hidden in turn? And how much can we say that we truly ever connected with someone when they're gone? The scene shifts. We are alone. Our walking speed is reduced to a crawl, as if the whole world is moving in slow motion. We watch Daniel's coffin slowly wheel forward into a furnace. Cremation burns his remains away to ashes. The scene lasts uncomfortably long, and there is nothing that we can do but watch. We have no agency when people die, when they leave us forever. The door closes behind his coffin. All we see is a small window into the flames, a tiny circle through which we can observe that potential intimacy be consumed by the fire. Once more, I reiterate that as players, we never even see Daniel's face. It's clear that we are supposed to feel completely disconnected from him, as we never knew anything about him. I imagine this is how Martin feels as he watches Daniel's earthly remains burn. There is a heavy sense of regret, a weight that drags Martin down and reminds him just how much he failed to be intimate. It is a mortifying ordeal to be close. But now, Daniel is gone. The possibility of that closeness is gone. We cut to black. We awaken next to our androgyne companion, The music shifts and there is a sense of anticipation. It's tense but also relaxing at the same time, like the feeling of letting one's guard down despite still being afraid. Martin and Clara are in bed together, and we feel the quiet anticipation. There is intimacy. It's exhilarating but terrifying. We are thrust into a conversation between them. One tells the other of their sense of disconnection. They always feel that they are on an opposing side to those around them. They feel alienated, othered. Once more, I come back to misquoting Hegel. No matter what we do, we are always, inevitably, diametrically opposed to others in our life. Our existence and Martin and Clara's existences are a dialectic. They are only able to understand and recognize themselves reflected in the other. No matter what Martin and Clara do, there is still that sense of being unable to truly let down their barriers. But there's a growing desire, a sense that they wish to tear those barriers down. Is this the way to be close? They talk. There is regret for the potential closeness lost when Daniel died, all the intimacy that faded away with his death, or more accurately, all the potential for intimacy, all that which never was, and now never will be. Martin tells Clara of the childhood moment at the blanket fort, of touching hands, with the fabric still keeping them apart. It's hard to tell what Martin wants. He approaches intimacy, but then seems to flee from it.
Separation and closeness. Is this why you build walls? Sometimes walls don't have to be made out of matter.
I want to be close.
We see, but for a moment, bed sheets hung out to dry, surrounding us, barriers everywhere trapping us. Our perspective returns to the bedroom, and we approach the curtains, approach our companion hidden on the other side, mimicking the same game that we saw in Martin's childhood. There is a barrier between Martin and Clara, just as there was a barrier between Martin and Daniel, but strangely, this time it feels different. This time it feels like there might be more to it, that the intimacy might not fail. They press their hands together, still separated by the fabric. A sense of strange urgency begins to form. One of them wants to be closer, to fully engage in true intimacy and break down this barrier between them, but it's unclear which of them is pursuing it. Is it Clara, who longs for more than just voyeurism? Or is it Martin, filled with regret and desperate not to make the same mistakes of the past? There's a crescendo of increasing desire, a longing with fierce desperation, the rise of libido, the desire for life, for sex, and all the fear and excitement and trepidation it brings. One urges the other to take a pair of scissors and cut through the fabric, to destroy the dividing boundary completely and utterly. There's a heady rush, a flirtation reciprocated, a love now requited. We cut to the world outside, walking through the empty night, surrounded by bedsheets hanging on laundry lines, barriers impossible to pass through, the boundaries that we must navigate alone and lost. We approach. We hear two shearing metallic noises, the sounds of scissors cutting fabric. At last, we see a figure standing behind the sheets. There are two holes cut in them, one at the mouth and the other at the genitalia. The metaphor is clear. Connection, although imperfect, achieved through touch, through conversation, and through sexuality. We don't ever see the whole other. The gruesome details and the parts they chose to hide are all hidden behind the sheet. All we see is a few areas where we are allowed to connect. But at the same time, there's still something uncomfortable in viewing this, seeing nothing but a mouth and a glory hole. Is this a way to be truly intimate, or merely a way to destroy healthy boundaries? It's a matter of perspective. We return abruptly to the theatre, but it's empty. There's no one else there, and we are trapped entirely alone. Martin and Clara are separated. It's frightening, and the soundtrack becomes more tense to reflect this. The tinnitus in our ears rings louder and louder as we navigate the dark concrete halls. Where once the sounds provided tense but positive anticipation, now it is dark and haunting. Our perspective shifts again, somewhere far away, We walk down towards the door, a barrier that we can traverse. Who are we now? Are we still Martin, or are we someone else? Our perspective returns to the walls of the theatre. They lean in further and further, giving an atmosphere of claustrophobia. The barriers Martin erected become horrible, oppressive, and violent. We at last enter the final room of the theatre, and we see the bedsheet nailed to the wall, one hole at the mouth, one hole between the legs. After all that anticipation, after all that tense build-up and longing for positive touch, true connection, we see something now horrifying and nauseating, something that leaves us with a sense of horror and lingering disgust. Sartre's ideas again begin to become apparent. To be connected is torture. To have that intimacy is to be forced to see and feel something uncomfortable, to be forced to feel that disgust and self-loathing. Martin's attempt at intimacy has become a nightmare. We shift perspective again. Far away, we check the door, ask if everything is okay, yet receive no response. We ask for Martin, but we cannot find him. Who are we now? Are we now Clara? Were we always playing as Clara and was our companion Martin the whole time? Which role must we now play? A matter of perspective. We open the door. There is no one there. The room is empty. We call out for Martin, but he's gone. Much like Daniel traversed a boundary that Martin could not follow, Martin has moved beyond a boundary that the player cannot. We see for a brief moment our companion on the other side of the bedsheet, present but silent, ominous and judgmental. We see for a brief moment the flames engulf Daniel's coffin. The scene cuts to black.
I'm sorry, I can't do this.
I love you.
I don't know what to say.
I thought this was helpful.
Despite all Martin's desire for connection, he couldn't take it. It was too much, too cutting, too honest, too open, too blinding and intense, like returning to sunlight after years underground. He felt the hell of other people, the gaze of the other. Being seen made him feel self-loathing and nausea, and, like a coward, he runs from it. For all his desires to be loved, he rejected the journey to get there, rejected the ordeal of being known.
Sometimes walls don't have to be made out of matter.
I know.
Our perspective returns to the theatre as Martin, stumbling in the dark. We are trapped in the understage of the theatre, which, as Martin and Clara called it, is hell itself. It's the hell of intimacy and the things that we really don't want the audience or our loved ones to see. Because of his need to hide himself, Martin is now alone. Stumbling through the halls, he calls out, asking if Clara is still there, but she isn't. No one is there. The soundscape becomes even more oppressive. The tenseness is no longer feeling like an excited anticipation, but pure, sheer terror. He enters the private room and sees the same curtain, the holes still there. We approach and pull back the curtain, longing for someone, anyone, to be there, not to be alone anymore. But there's no one. Just an after-image of the person that we once were so desperate to connect to. Unable to take the terror that is human connection, we remain alone. The lights go out. The stage darkens. The entire room is pitch black. The only way out is to stumble forward and hug the walls. The darkness is all-consuming, as is our loss. The walls Martin built, that we built, now shut out all light and all hope. The horror of the game starts to sink its teeth into us. It's not the horror of being chased or monsters waiting in the dark, but the horror of self-isolation, of rendering ourselves entirely and completely alone. Martin stumbles out of the understage, and in a moment of desperation, he begs Daniel not to go, begs for connections that he cannot and never will have. There's nowhere left for us to go. We move Martin forward and up onto the stage, into the place where he engages in his performances, his inherent inauthenticity. Upon the stage, we find nothing but 2 empty chairs arranged before us, the same ones from Martin's childhood, the barriers he always kept with him. With a click, our perspective shifts. From outside the window, we now look in. We are now the perspective of the audience, the voyeurs, observing the empty chairs and the empty stage. The play is over. Martin is gone. As the metaphorical curtain falls on our stage, I'm reminded of the opening crawl of the game. Martin died in walls of his own creation. Ongoing investigations point towards possible suspects in his close environment. Is this to say that Clara and Daniel are those responsible for Martin's death? Is Clara herself even alive by the end of the tale? I don't think that anything so melodramatic is the case. I just think that it points to Martin's own failings. He died because of how much he chose to wall himself in, away from those who could have loved him, those he could have had a genuine connection with. But despite this, I cannot help but sympathize with him and his failings, with how far he nosedived into the hedgehog's dilemma, because love and intimacy is terrifying. To be known and seen is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to risk being hurt. To connect is frightening. To love and to be loved is to submit to hell. But to reject it is to be alone, trapped in the darkness of the dead stage forever. And one day, those we want to connect with will cross over a boundary where we cannot follow. In the end, Martin died in walls of his own making, trapped by his own barriers, too afraid to truly connect to those he cared for, but still longing for that connection. The final line of the game, which I believe is spoken by Martin.
I love you.
And so our story ends. With death, with crossing that final threshold, with that boundary that we can't come back from. What are we supposed to take from this? My own personal conclusion is that this story is all entirely metaphorical, especially with how on the nose the metaphors and their repetition are. I don't regard the events as literal depictions of whole, complete characters and their actions, and to me, the metaphor is clear. Connection is vital, love is vital. Without it, trapped alone, our characters cannot know one another and cannot know themselves and eventually will become nothing. Is being loved worth the pain? Were any of these characters truly loved when we look on their roles and have walked in their shoes? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the only thing that we can say for sure is that the pain of isolation and of darkness is portrayed as far more horrifying than the pain of being loved and of being known. If we truly want love and connection, we must allow ourselves to be seen in all our most vulnerable, most scared, and most disgusting moments. And we must brave Sartre's hell to do so, the hell of other people. We must pass through our own ordeals and hope that maybe, just maybe, the ones we want to connect with will accept us, both the good and the bad parts of ourselves. I enjoyed this game immensely. And I was incredibly impressed at how I managed to portray such a heavy, deep story with relatively little in the way of words, and but a few selected notes of imagery. Christoph Frey is very skilled at his craft. If you haven't already checked it out, please take a look at it on itch.io or Steam. I'll put links in the description below, and please don't rely on my interpretation as gospel truth. There is so much left to metaphor and subtlety in this game that my perspective on it is just that, one perspective. And as the game shows, perspective is everything. Thank you for watching. I'd like to give a special thanks to Gianni Matrigrano, Luke Correa, and Voice Quills who provided their wonderful performances for this script. If you enjoyed this video, please do leave a little like or a comment and subscribe if you want to. It genuinely really helps out the channel and lets me talk about more weird and existential games. And please do check out the channels of these voice actors too. I also have a Patreon as well, which is linked in the description below, which helps me produce more videos like this for you, my lovely viewers. Some of my wonderful patrons are here in the end credits, and I'd like to give a special thanks to Alex Schmepp, Crushable Door, and Sarah Grammer. thank you all again for watching. We still have quite a few other video essays in the works. Notably at the moment we still have the very long Knights of the Old Republic 2 essay, which I promise you is coming soon, just has become a very, very large behemoth of a project. We also have a video on the visual novel We Know the Devil. Alongside these, I'm planning to look at some of the other works from Icepick Lodge, including The Void, or their newest game, Know by Heart, which again I'll link in the description below, and potentially something like Near Replicant, alongside some non-video game essay works, like a large essay on Medica Magica, which I have mostly completed and written, and possibly one on Revolutionary Girl Utena. Thank you all so much for watching, and stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.